spaghetti and meatballs. It's a great classic, perfect for any weeknight. So today on Cooking with Parker, I'm going to show you how to make your own homemade meatballs and a nice marinara sauce. We're going to use store-bought spaghetti. You can make your own spaghetti, but it's not really worth the effort in my opinion. So can't wait to show you this great, simple recipe, and let's go. Start off with, I got a pound of ground beef. So I bought this in bulk, put it in a Ziploc baggie, then freeze it, thaw it for any time later use. I got a pound of Bass Farm hot sausage, so kind of a cheat there, give it a little bit extra flavor just using some pre-made sausage. And put in half a cup of breadcrumbs. I don't bother soaking that in water and milk like a lot of other recipes. And drop in a nice whole egg, and then using some pre-minced garlic. Isn't quite as good as the fresh stuff, but it gets the flavor in there. And then I'm gonna grate some fresh Parmesan Reggiano in there. I'm gonna get about a quarter cup of that. I'm not being super exact in my measurements. Using Italian seasoning, just kind of go straight in the end. About a teaspoon of that. Dried herbs work great for this because kind of the meat's gonna naturally hydrate them. So once you got that, just kind of work it with my hands. You can put gloves on if you want, but I don't really worry about that. Just kind of work it till it's all homogenous. It's gonna be a little tacky to the touch as well. And then once you get that, gonna grab myself a cookie scoop. This is a kind of small cookie scoop, about an inch each. So there'll be a little smaller side on the meatball size, not big honking things you might get at a restaurant, but it gets the job done. Just kind of go till I got a full pan. I think I ended up with about 36 meatballs at the end. Just gonna scoop these until I've got the bowl empty. Don't want any to go to waste. This last one's a little small, but that's all right. Go ahead and set this aside. I'm gonna wash the bowl, wash my hands. Make sure you always clean as you go if you can. I'm gonna pop these in the fridge, kind of let them set up. They'll hold their shape a little bit better once they're cooled off. Go ahead and hone my knife. So this isn't technically sharpening it. That's a common misconception. This kind of helps clean up your knife. It helps it cut a little bit better. Probably could sharpen my knife. We'll do that here at some point, but went ahead and used what I got right now. Go ahead and cut this onion just in half, peel it, and then I do like to do kind of the sideways cut. Just helps keep nice even cubes, and then dice it. So just speeding this up, just kind of showing you my method again. It's nothing too complicated, but it's good practice to just practice dicing onions. I'm gonna drop some olive oil in the pan, probably about a tablespoon of that. I use my bench scraper, just helps collect up the onions all at once, kind of speeds up the process a little bit. Just dropping all those onions in there. Then we're gonna hit it with some salt, probably about just a teaspoon of that. It'll just help sweat the onions out. Grab a nice wooden spoon, just kind of stir this, make sure that all the onions are broken up. Grab a couple garlic cloves. I'm gonna crush them with the heel of my knife. I'll just kind of release the skin and then peel it. This takes a little bit of time, so I decided to use the fresh garlic for the marinara rather than the pre-minced stuff. So just kind of using whatever you feel like. There's not a strict rules to it in cooking, and just kind of cutting the tips off. And I'm using my garlic press to get a nice kind of mince on this garlic. Could mince it by hand with my knife, but using this tool, it speeds up the process. You lose a little bit of the product, but it works all right. Gets a good final nice fresh garlic result in the end. So you just kind of cook those. You don't want them brown, just kind of want to sweat all the liquid out. So once it hits that, add a nice glug of red wine. I'm gonna cook the alcohol out, but just kind of give a nice extra depth of flavor by adding that. You can always skip that step if you don't have wine or don't want to use it. Then I grab a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Gonna take the lid off, drop them in there. And once you got that, that's mostly it. We're gonna add about a tablespoon. Again, use my exact hand measurement to get a tablespoon of dried basil. You can use fresh basil if you like. Add that later on though. I wanna add the dried early on so it kind of rehydrates. Go ahead and try my marinara sauce. I add a little sugar, and tomatoes are pretty acidic, so we're gonna balance it out with that. And then I'm gonna throw our meatballs in there, keep going from there. I actually moved the marinara to my stovetop so it kind of simmers while I work on making the meatballs. Decided to go ahead and roll my meatballs into tight little balls. Could throw them directly in the oven as they are now, but decided to be a little bit extra. Roll them into uniform shapes, and then I'm gonna sear them in my nonstick pan. So this just kind of helped develop an extra exterior crust, kind of stealing some of that flavor. So just go until I get it marked on one side, give it a nice little flip with my tongs. Just go around, hit all those, and then while they're cooking, keep rolling out the rest of my meatballs. Just gonna toss these from time to time as they're cooking, so you wanna kind of get as best you can a crust around the whole edge. It's a little tricky with them, being as round as they are. So that's why I'm going, using my fingers, kind of tip them up on each side. But once I got more or less a crust around all of it, got it some nice dark brown color, go ahead and set these off. They're not cooked all the way. They're actually pretty much raw still in the middle. So we're gonna finish by cooking it in the marinara sauce. We're gonna slowly simmer that. So not worried about the extra texture. So just doing batch at a time. And then kind of one of my habits working from the restaurant, I always want to keep a good count of how many I got. So just straightening them up and keep going, searing them, give a toss as I go along. Nothing really to it, just want to get a nice kind of crust. Set these aside one by one. Don't want to overcrowd the pan, so that's why I kind of got to do these 3 separate batches. But don't need to rush it, just taking my time, getting this done. And it's going to give a great kind of nice crust to the meatball, help hold it together as we marinate it or finish cooking it in the marinara. You know, just out of habit again, kind of straighten it out, make sure I still got the 36 I started with. Actually I have 37, got this one little extra one. Cooking that low and slow in the burner so that I can go ahead and try this meatball.
That's spicy meatball.
No, not really. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But meatball is delicious, nice and moist. Got all the right flavors. Kind of using that Italian or that farm sausage, kind of cheating a little bit, but can't go wrong with this meatball. As I mentioned earlier, just gonna add just a touch of sugar to the marinara. Just kind of brighten it up a little bit. Not gonna give it a real sweetness to it. Just kind of cuts through that acidity. And then go ahead and drop all my meatballs in there. So got to be a little careful with them. You know, they're just pretty fragile still, just kind of seared on the outside. As I'm mixing up with the spoon, don't want to overwork it and break them up. But as they cook, they'll kind of firm up a little bit, kind of maintain their shape. Cook it for about 30 minutes till it reaches 160 degrees internal. Check that with the meat thermometer. Just gonna cover this up and actually move it to the stove top again while I keep working on my induction burner. So you probably know how to cook pasta, but go ahead and show you this as well. You want to heavily salt your water and then drop the pasta in there. Just kind of push it in so just the bottom touches, and after really not too long, 15-20 seconds so, the bottom starts to soften up, so you kind of rotate it. This is kind of my method since it doesn't fit. You don't want to crack your spaghetti, that'll make all the Italians mad. So after, you know, another 30-45 seconds, it's going to soften up. I'm going to cook it for about 10 minutes or so total. Give it a try, make sure it's at the right texture. You want it al dente, and that's all there is to it. I'm just going to go ahead and use my tongs to pull the spaghetti directly out of the pot, drop it into my meatball and marinara mixture. So we're just going to make sure we get all of that out. I know this isn't actually an Italian dish, it's very much an American dish that we've kind of claimed to be Italian, but it's not. So I understand that, but just using my wooden spoon one more time, you just want to mix it all together, get that marinara sauce coating all the pasta. Again, try not to murk it too hard. You don't want to break up your meatballs. And once that's done, I'm gonna go ahead and use my tongs one last time. You know, you could kind of twirl it or do something real fancy, but I'm just making myself a weeknight meal, showing you how to do it. And just gonna go ahead and grab the spaghetti, grab 2 or 3 meatballs, just how many you like. You know, I got plenty of them, plenty of spaghetti. This feeds a lot of people. And we're gonna go ahead and grate some fresh Parmesan, because this clip speaks to me. I don't know if you've seen this before, but I felt like sharing it.
I always want more Parmesan when I'm in Paris. I always want more Parmesan.
As you see, everybody agrees more Parmesan is better. All right, time for the final taste test. Just get a swirl of the spaghetti, grab a whole meatball. So good. I mean, meatballs, super moist, super flavorful, come together really easily. That marinara, again, just crushed tomatoes, got the red wine giving a little extra flavor. The real simple, and then the store-bought spaghetti. So it's a great thing to throw together for a quick weeknight meal, or you know, you can jazz it up a little bit if you want. And makes a bunch of meatballs, so you can, instead of putting them all together, freeze them, cook them separately, and you got meals for the future. If you like this video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.